Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. And today we have my friend Omkar. Everybody give a round of applause for Omkar. Omkar, thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Omkar. This is a unexpectedly heavy microphone. I've only ever seen these like on streams. I've never tried holding one. But what do you want to know?
Just a brief overview of who you are, what you like.
Professionally?
Or both.
Or personal?
Both.
Well, I'm Omkar. I'm a recent graduate of UC Davis, and I like to host events. We had a little social gathering here yesterday, and we get live music together. And I like to help people create professional connections. This is like my LinkedIn pitch, you know, like LinkedIn as if I'm cool. But outside of school and, you know, trying to get a good GPA and volunteering and whatnot, I also enjoy riding motorcycles. So right now, my housemate's out trying to convince a guy to sell him his $1,000 dirt bike for $500. And
holy lowball! You're joking.
yeah, he was like, I'm gonna go look at it, and do you want to come with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then he was like, but you do know, like, realistically, I'm not gonna buy it unless it's for $500. And I was like, get out of here. Like, okay,
Get
go
out of here.
like, yeah, like, just go alone, and then like, let me know when you buy it, and then I'll pick you up, and you can, you know, ride the bike back. Rite of passage.
I would not be able to handle that secondhand embarrassment in person if I would definitely not go with him. Okay, so after this, our voice is cut out I took like multiple clips, and then after this part, our voice cut out for the rest of this clip. So in the next clip, it's clip number 2, but it's also nighttime because it cut out all of the stuff that it cut out. And this happens like one other time or 2 other times in this podcast. Sorry. Thanks. Okay, guys, welcome back from that intermission. This is now the next week. Just kidding. Everybody laugh. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So the question was, how did you come to the conclusion that I want to be a doctor? What was the main point? And you said, well, it wasn't a specific time or day. It was kind of gradual. And then the other part of the question was, so the driving force of keeping you disciplined and keeping you motivated, was it entirely yourself? Was it entirely your parents? Or was it like a mixture of both?
I think I'll start with the second half. So for me, it was, I think a lot of people, whenever I talk about wanting to go to medical school, they'll kind of assume that, you know, it's a stereotype that a lot of Asians and Indians go into medicine. And so they'll ask like, oh, are your parents making you do that? And I think I've met some doctors who, for them, it was definitely the case that they were pushed into it more. But for me, I don't think I would have made it this far if my parents were forcing me to do it. But at the same time, it wouldn't have been possible without their support.
We're having a conversation, so.
Yeah.
Move the mic, you have like the red light on your back.
Oh, yeah.
Got a sniper on your
Yeah,
back.
the sniper's targeting me. Thank you, camera. So, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without their support for sure. But it's my motivation to go into medicine. And so as to how I came to the decision, you know, it's I think a lot of personal statements essentially come back to like, I enjoy science and helping people, but I'm going to say that in a way that doesn't sound like I'm saying that. You know, I'm being facetious a bit, but yeah, it's really like every pre-med, not every, but you know, if I'm allowed to paint with some broad strokes here, like every pre-med basically gets into it because they like science and they like helping people, and medicine is a career that allows you to do that while still without, maybe I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. I think, for example, one of the things that people will ask is like, okay, if you enjoy helping people, like, why not become a social worker? Or maybe the most analogous thing is like, why not become like a PA or an MA, physician assistant, or a medical assistant, or why not become an EMT or a nurse? Because these are all people who work, in the same field, and they're all part of the same team even. And so, each of those jobs has its pros and cons. And for me, it was, I shadowed or shadow is a strong word, but maybe while I was in the emergency department, I spent many nights working amongst a team of nurses in an orthopedic trauma unit. And, with them, I had them all, I said, convince me to go into nursing. That way I don't have to do so many years of medical school. And they did a pretty good job. They really sold me on the pros of the profession. And at the same time, the cons that they gave me weren't necessarily specific to nursing. Like, one of them was talking about how when she worked in Arizona during the COVID pandemic, she's like, everyone was just always so angry. That was like her big negative takeaway. That was like the thing that she disliked the most about her job. She was saying like everyone was so angry, and it was really hard to help people even if you wanted to. And it's like being a doctor wouldn't solve you of that, but there's other factors that I won't really get into here that kind of pushed me more into medicine. I think maybe one of the big ones though that I'll talk about is being able to be the authority, not because it's like you want power over other people, but you want the confidence in knowing that you're the one making the right call, and that any decision you make is because you have like all the knowledge necessary to make it. Whereas if you're a subordinate in a team, you can do a great job supporting people and providing the care that needs to be provided, but you don't necessarily have the full spectrum of knowledge needed to make those decisions. It's basically just carrying them out. And even now I'm still I'm a little unsure, like, am I comfortable with that level of liability? But so far it hasn't dissuaded me.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A good father.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think the best answers to that kind of question are something that's like more abstract, or something that's more of characteristics rather than titles. And I think maybe you can ask yourself like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you can be that thing right now. I think one of the kind of like pseudo deep answers is like, I want to be kind. And it's like, why not be kind today? like I guess we're always
Fuck, I gotta be an asshole today. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a shift at the mean person factory, and I'm clocking in for overtime. So sorry, everyone. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I think like, I don't know, maybe I want to just be the best version of myself, however I choose to. Actually, I'm going to pivot this. Like, people talk about dating, right? And they're like, oh, just be yourself, bro. Bro, just be yourself. Like, and I don't think that's necessarily true. People will say like, no, you have to be like a certain character. Like, you have to be a certain kind of person. And that's not true either. It's like, you should be yourself, but the best version of yourself. There's some social like standards that I think, you should kind of, strive for. Like, for example, if maybe you're an introvert like me, you can say like, okay, the kind of person I am is like, I don't really talk to people in a public setting. Like, I have a tough time going up to people in crowds to like start a conversation. Like, I'm being myself when I go out, and I sit silently in the corner all night. But the better version of myself is someone who, in those situations, maybe I won't really make conversations, but I'll talk to friends of friends, or I'll have someone introduce me to other people, or maybe I'll go out of my way to find like smaller, more intimate settings where it's easier to start conversations, and that's like being a better version of myself. Or maybe if we're talking about maybe like appearances, you don't necessarily have to have like some certain haircut. It's not like, oh, like people dig beards, or like they dig a mustache, or like a side taper fade, but having like good grooming habits goes a long way. So to go back, it's like you're kind of changing and learning new lessons throughout your life, but kind of applying them and being the best version of yourself that you can be today and in the future. Maybe what do I want to be when I grow up is like someone who keeps learning and doesn't lose the passion for moving forward. Like you should always be striving for something new.
Sorry, a UFO is here to pick us up.
We live right next to the airport.
It's just a little distracting.
Let's be distracted. I heard Rapture's tomorrow.
You're a little late. A few weeks ago. Okay, now that it's gone, thank you. Okay, going back to being a little bit more superficial. Let's say you're 40-year-old Omkar, and this is a day in your week. Tell me a weekday and a weekend. What does each of those days look like for you?
Maybe this is going to sound very uninspiring, but on a weekday, I'd probably be at work. And then, I guess,
What
like
time are you waking up? What time are you going to work? What
yeah.
does that look like?
Okay, sure. Now it's the sirens. The sirens are calling. I'd envision myself maybe going to work pretty early, like pre-sunrise, and then I'd like to get out before the sun sets. So maybe that's a low bar. But I like being able to see the sun. I mean, there's some jobs where like that's not the case. And it's hard to say exactly what, if I'm successful in getting into med school, it's hard to say what specialty I'll wind up matching into and all that. So right now I'm trying to keep a very open mind as to like what the day-to-day would look like. Maybe ideally I live in California, but I've been through the Midwest a bit, or I don't know if you can call it the Midwest, but places like Wyoming, Idaho. I could maybe foresee myself living, not necessarily on the coast, but the East Coast is also cool, the Pacific Northwest, all these regions, like I'm down to live wherever. I think basically for the weekday, it's like I want to be going into my job and making a difference and making some sort of contribution that I'm satisfied with and that I feel is valued by members of my team. That's like so big for job satisfaction, by the way, guys. If we want to go back to talking about career, because that was like a big focus before.
Well, I guess not much for you guys, lol. Because like you missed the whole thing. Sorry.
Like, if you're looking for a job or an internship, like one of the biggest pieces of advice I can drop is like try to always improve on some sort of process, and try to like, of course, like do your best work. That way it's inherently satisfying. Like you should be proud of what you do. If you submit work that like you're not proud of, it's I think like damaging to your soul a little bit. But yeah, like be proud of the work you do, and then try to make improvements in a way that, if it's valued by your team, it's more motivational. And then, kind of the more practical side of things, not that this is the only reason you should be doing it, but just to like be candid, it's always good to like put on your resume. It shows that you're always like thinking, that you're always looking on ways to improve and be, I used this phrase earlier, like an asset to the company, because as an employee, that's what you are. They're like investing in you especially if you're a younger person, because you're not going to necessarily be in this position forever. So you want to convince people that, like, even though I'm going to be here for a short amount of time, it'll be like, you will spend some money training me, and maybe I'll be slow for like the first bit of time compared to someone who's already trained, but it will pay off because, like, I might develop something that improves your workflow, or that improves like the quality of your results. Like, if you're talking about lab work, one thing I've been working on right now is, we do a lot of cell counting, and our process has been like literally counting cells manually. And I was like, I know the software is capable of doing it automatically. Like, everyone in this lab knows the software is capable of doing the cell counting automatically, but like, why haven't we actually like explored or tried doing it? Or like, why did we give up the last time? And so like, that's a project I've been working on, is like, how do we get the software to count our cells automatically? Because that would save, like, I don't know what the pay rate is for the scientists that work there. Like, I go there for free, but they're spending their time counting cells. And, if they spend like 10 hours on it, and we, like, even if they're being paid like let's just say 20 an hour, like, that's $200 for counting some files. And that's pretty like rote work. So being able to make some sort of improvement like that is big. Or like, always be open to taking on new responsibilities. I think people will say, like, that's not in my job role or responsibilities. And it's true. But the way my dad gave me this advice, he was like, when I was in my 30s, I was getting paid pretty, not poorly, but not very well at the time, because he was like an H-1B immigrant worker. And so he's like, I was putting in way more work than what the job requirements entailed, and I wasn't getting paid for it back then. But now it does pay off. Like, now, because of the knowledge I accumulated, learning new things back then for stuff that was like outside of my scope, like, now I get paid for that knowledge and for that information. And so, like, the way I'm applying that now is I have basically no experience coding. Like, I understand logic, but I don't really understand syntax, like programming syntax. But I'm putting in the effort to learn how to like code in Python to run some statistical tests. And that's something that now I can talk about in future interviews. If they'll say like, oh, are you familiar with like XYZ process? If it's Python, I can be like, no, I'm not familiar with that, but I was able to learn enough to do this project, like to run this statistical test, so I'm confident in my ability to learn. Or maybe they'll say like, do you know C++? I don't even know if that's the kind of question they'd ask. Like, that's the level of my knowledge. But I could say something like, I'm not very familiar with programming. I have some experience in R. I have some experience in Python. And just, even though I don't have much experience, I'm confident in my ability to learn to do projects such as, and then you can talk about the projects you did. So I, definitely be open to taking on responsibilities that are outside of your scope, because even if you're not being paid for it now, hopefully, and this is why I said earlier, appreciation from your team is basically the only payment you get for it now. But it's basically an investment you're making that will like pay off in the future. You'll like, my dad likes a lot of these finance analogies. It's basically like, right now you're putting in the principal investments, and then all of the interest comes in later in your future roles.
And then a day off.
On my day off, I would be chilling. Rest is important too. Like, I'm talking about all this grind set stuff, but like, spend time with your friends. Yesterday I hosted a party in this very same backyard. We had a live band. I ride motorcycles. My friends and I started like a motorcycle club at UC Davis. Not officially affiliated, but it was a group of riders that would consistently go out. We had practices where we would help people like learn their fundamental skills. We would go out to group rides, exploring new places, all of that kind of stuff. It's leisure, and it makes you like a more well-rounded person as well.
We're kind of already in that train of topic anyway, but what's a very non-obvious advice for someone who wants to take like a similar path to you? What would you say to them? Something that's not obvious.
When you say path, like, do you mean specifically like as a doctor or like healthcare or
That's
just like the kind of person? Okay.
Viewer's discretion. Whatever.
Okay, creative interpretation. A little scary for me to see with the price of education nowadays is people coming into college looking to figure it out. And I won't, I'm not disparaging that because I have a friend who's now like taking the LSAT in a week. And when he entered college at UC Berkeley, he was still like figuring it out. So not to say that it won't happen, but I think going to a university and depending on how much your tuition is, paying thousands of dollars every few months to like figure something out is a very expensive way to go about it. So if you don't know what you want to do before you go to college, first like figure out if college is something you even want to do. I think there's a lot of people talk about the trades and stuff, but it's true. Like I have friends who didn't go to college and they've been successful. They're like living pretty good. So figure out, I think having a vision is important. Don't necessarily like try to avoid playing by ear. And I know, you're like, what do you envision your future looks like? And I was like, hopefully it's chill and hopefully I have a job. But if you're decide first if college is worth it for you, and if you are going to go, decide if like what career you want. Like pick your career before you pick your major. I think, like for me, I thought, and I'm still going with this line, I chose molecular and medical microbiology. That was my major, because I was like, okay, it has medical in the name, so obviously like this will make me a doctor, right? But
if it has medical in the name, then you're doctor. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, at least, okay, it's some sort of biological sciences, which makes your prereqs, it kind of sorts them out. It's much easier to take your prereqs as if you're already some sort of science major. But I also chose that because I knew it gave me redundancy in careers. I figured maybe I could go into food science, microbiology, like big in the yogurts, cheese, beer, fermentation, that sort of thing. Or you can go into some sort of like research or lab or industry. And I knew those backup options were there. There's many schools, at least in the University of California system, have some sort of like neurobiology program. So here it's called neurobiology, physiology, and behavior. At UCLA, it's called psychobiology. In some other UC, it's called biopsychology. But the point being, I didn't choose that major, even though it sounded more interesting to me, because I wasn't sure if it really had a good career prospect. So, make sure the career you pick make sure the major you pick will support the career that you're envisioning for yourself. If you don't know what you want to do for a career. This was like one thing that we did in Boy Scouts. It was like, you talk to some adults about their career that they do, and you'll find out like there's all these jobs that you don't even realize exist. Like there was this guy who sold airplane parts to airplane companies, and I was like, I thought the airplane companies just made their own parts. Like I thought they built the plane, but apparently it's like, the airplane company has to buy their bolts from a company that's like, what's certified. Thank you. Yeah, a company that's certified to actually, safety rated, and so. The parts are still pretty cheap, but because they do like all this tolerance testing, the markup on it is like 900%. So he was talking about how that difference in pricing has been, good for his take-home earnings. But yeah, it's, you'll find out about jobs like that. I mean, of course, there's like stuff like lawyer, or like, I'm trying to remember other people I've spoken to. Or working in the government for like environmental policy. You'll find out a lot of jobs that kind of exist. One thing that I would caution against is looking up like highest paying jobs 2025. Like
That'll change, brother.
yeah.
That'll change in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you know, if you did that and you went into CS, things are looking a bit tough.
Grim.
But you know, it's funny you say that. That wasn't even like the reason I brought it up. But yeah, that is a valid point. The highest paying careers are always changing. I was talking to a friend, and I don't know how true this is, but he was talking about how like don't go. I was talking a bit about career meta earlier, you know, when I was talking about doing things outside of the scope of your job for experience. Like, that's career meta. But if you're trying to like pick a role based on the salary alone, like one thing that I heard from a friend was like people in CS are now going into nursing. I don't know how true that is, but it's like, why would you do that? Just try, you know, I hear people pivot their careers. There's some sort of saying, and it's not coming to me now, but there's this idea of like what you'll be doing in 30 years isn't like, or 20, whatever the timeline is, like in a few decades isn't the same job that you'll be doing now. Most likely, like, you'll be pivoting into something new. And you know, that comes again from exploring stuff that's outside of the scope of your job. But if you're kind of picking something that is there just for the number, the satisfaction you get from it is probably not going to be as much. And there's people who say like, well, I don't enjoy any sort of job, so I might as well get paid for it. And to that, I don't know. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you probably can find something that you enjoy. It's just like talk to adults in your life. And I know it's also sometimes it's very dependent on like the region you're in. Sometimes like you live somewhere and everyone does the same thing, and that can be harder. But you know, I guess if you look at, you know, yeah, Reddit is a big one. I was trying to think if I could think of any specific subreddits. But yeah, like career subreddits, maybe just like
Rate my job. I don't know. I made that up.
It's okay. I was like, maybe we're getting into some esoteric sources. RateMyJob.com, not sponsored.
Unless they want to.
Unless they want to. RateMyJob.com. Hit us up.
If you're listening, come on. Those are great. I have two questions left for you. And these are kind of like philosophical. But what does success look like and mean to you? And has your definition of success changed over the years?
For me, has changed. It used to be pretty much defined by school. Like, okay, do I get a good grade in the class? Then like I'm successful. You know, I got an A. That's successful. I forget the acronym for it now. There's a good acronym that people use for defining goals. And it's something like, you know, it should have a timeline, it should be realistic, and you should be able to break it down into steps. There's 4 points, and I don't know if that third one was one of them. I can look it up briefly if that's okay, but essentially the idea is, you know, if you set goals and accomplish them, I think that's successful. So like right now, my goal is to get into medical school, but if I was to set that goal like 4 years ago, that's fine. It was my goal 4 years ago, but just saying I want to get into medical school is a much harder measure of success compared to, okay, I'm going to get like this GPA. You can say overall, or you can just say like this quarter, or in this specific class, I'm going to get like this grade, you know? So success for me is being able to meet my goals. To answer the first question, like succinctly, the ability to meet my goals, but make sure that you're setting goals that make sense. Yeah, so the acronym is, a goal is SMART. So SMART, which stands for specific, measurable. So specific meaning, you know, I want to get into medical school is not as specific as I want to get into UC Davis School of Medicine. Measurable, you know, do I get in or not? Attainable, okay, me talking about getting into New York University versus UC Davis, there's people who do it, but for the kind of person I am and for my qualifications, I think UC Davis is a more attainable school for me. And then relevant for me, it is a relevant goal, with with everything I've spoken about so far. And then lastly, time bound. So I might say I want to get into UC Davis in the next 4 years. And if I had defined my goal that way, then technically I would be unsuccessful because I just graduated and I'll be applying in 2026. But if I was to say now, I want to get into UC Davis Medical School, by the end of the 2026 application cycle, I think that's pretty well defined. And one thing that isn't really covered in this acronym, but that I kind of alluded to earlier, is breaking it down into steps, because having one big goal makes it easy to lose the vision. It should just be there for your guidance, but breaking things down into steps is extremely key to make sure that you're actually making progress. So for me, like I say I want to apply to med school, but have I made my school list? Have I requested letters of recommendation? Have I written my primary? Have I looked up the secondary questions and written the secondaries? Have I prepared for interviews? Have I taken any interviews? All of that sort of stuff. Breaking down your big goal into sub goals. Again, for some people this is very obvious advice, but I think because it's so obvious, we forget to do it. So maybe it just bears repeating. And if it's not obvious, I hope that it's helpful now to hear. But yeah, breaking your goals down into steps goes a long way towards making sure that you're actually making progress.
That I'm going to use that personally. I'm going to steal that from you. My last question before we kind of wrap things up is, do you feel fulfilled right now?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think I would have said that a while ago too. I was kind of thinking back to when I was excuse me. Back when I was in my undergrad. Way back when I was
Unkin Chop.
back yeah, just a few months ago, or if in my third year specifically, a lot of this stuff I was doing was very taxing, like time-wise, and sometimes it felt unfulfilling because the payoff is a bit delayed. You're doing all this stuff and you're like, man, does it even matter? Or like, is this helping me in any way? Or what am I learning? And sometimes in a lot of the things you do, the lessons aren't immediately obvious, and it's only later that you realize you've come across like some sort of situation similar to this before. Like if you talk about conflicts in the workplace, like maybe if you're in some sort of toxic work environment, you might be leaving there thinking like, is this even worth it? Or like, what am I learning? Like, I just go into work dreading it every day. But
Friendly fire after friendly fire.
But you come out, not even. but you'll come out of it later. But I'm glad at least that it's being found relevant now as I'm talking. But you'll come out of it later, and maybe in a few years, you're in a similar situation, and you realize like at least you know how to deal with like that kind of person, whatever archetype that is. but yeah, it's like I feel fulfilled now because academically my undergraduate life was relatively successful. I was able to graduate with honors, so I'm pretty proud of that. I scored well on my MCAT, and that was all fine, and I was able to be pretty social as well. Like yesterday when I hosted this like party social event, the backyard was full, the kitchen was full, the dining room was full, the living room was full. Like,
And it's not a small like apartment. It's like a house. It was like a very and a good and lively group. Because sometimes you go to a party and you're like, everybody's a wallflower. But last night, and also every time he has one of these gatherings, it's always some of like the most interesting people. Everyone's actually so willing to be involved with everyone else and talk. Nobody has like this too cool for school vibe to them. And I think because you are that type of person yourself, you kind of attract that type of group too. So like I think it was like 30 people last night here, and everybody was such like a joy to be around.
yeah, true. I think that's a big thing. Like, I'm very fulfilled with the kind of people I've surrounded myself with socially. But yeah, it's always, sometimes there's always like highs and lows. It's sometimes, when I was studying for the MCAT, it was like I don't get to see my friends, so I felt very unfulfilled socially. But, everyone was back home in LA or wherever traveling, and I was like sitting, in my room, like in front of the screen for 10 hours a day. And so that was like very unfulfilling. Like, I knew it mattered and I knew that I was getting better, but until I took the test and actually got like a good score, it is hard. But now I'm kind of sitting again in this sort of intermediate place, and I'm fulfilled with what's done. And probably when I start writing my applications and submitting and waiting for interviews, it'll be a very unfulfilling time, just because you're in that purgatory. But, is it purgatory or purgatory? This is a word I've only ever read. I've never...
I call it purgatory.
Yeah, okay. So when you're
The
in the
The
purgatory...
raptor's coming.
Yeah, like, I had never said the word...
yeah.
Well, no, I'd never said the word Armageddon in real life. I'd only ever read it in books. So I thought it was Armageddon.
That's my
and-
Transformer name, actually.
yeah, so kind of embarrassing when I said that, like, in real life, and someone was like,
What the hell are you talking
Armageddon?
about?
Like, so
Everyone probably knows from that movie Armageddon.
I did not know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the comment was, everyone knows from the movie Armageddon. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Doesn't matter.
Fuck my piece of shit life.
but yeah, it's, I don't know, someone probably has better advice on like fulfillment in terms of in the intermediate. Like, people talk about, if you're always chasing, like, oh, I'll be happy when, is probably one of the worst things you can say, because then it's like never. But or this is kind of funny, like, when I got my MCAT score, I was like, wow, that's crazy, nice. It's like, that's it, like the rush lasts for like 2 hours, and then you send it, you call mom and you're like, okay, hey, I got a 521.
For those of you who don't know, that's really fucking good. How about that?
Yeah, it's, you call mom, and then mom sends it to her WhatsApp groups, and then you're getting a call from uncle and aunt, and then she's looking up like the like Stanford MCAT median, and she's like, oh, that's within like their range, and
You're a golden boy for the next 2 hours.
Yeah,
and that's it.
it's like cool for a few hours, and then like the congrats roll in over a few days. And like, okay, the external validation probably lasted longer than like my own personal excitement over the score, but it is fulfilling to know, like, I set the goal and I was able to achieve it, right? Circling back to those like SMART goals. So, I, at the time, I never set the goal to get a 521 on the MCAT. The goal was like, study for 10 hours today, and not even study for 10 hours a day, because then studying looks like scrolling. It's like, okay, do like 500 flashcards or whatever,
500
watch
beers.
500 beers for the study sesh. Yeah, I mean, even like unconventional advice, like, I was studying at bars. I was here over winter break in Davis, and I would, the library closes, the cafes close, but if you go to the bars early enough, or you go like on a weekday, when there normally aren't too many people there. It's a pretty relaxed place. You can chat with the bartenders a bit, so it's a bit social, but it's relatively quiet, and they'll, at least they let me like control the volume of the music and stuff. But that was chill. Like, it's not drunk studying, but it's something a bit more exciting and unconventional, like going to a new place and having that sort of stimulating environment. Talking about unconventional advice, unobvious advice, go study at the bars if you're over 21.
Go study at the bars and get shit-faced, by the way. Don't do that. That's bad advice.
Yeah, don't drink too much.
Don't even drink. Like, I mean, you could have a mocktail, like a fun drink to like treat yourself, but you don't have to drink if you don't want to drink. Like, I think that's some of the best advice I can give. Maybe I don't think there was ever pressure to actually drink or smoke or do any of that stuff that are like specific to college. But if you don't want to do it, don't. I promise you, nobody gives a gaff. Like, nobody cares if you're going to drink or not, and nobody cares if you're going to smoke or not. And if they do, if your friends are like, you're a fucking loser, like, they'll get over it in like 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it's never that serious. Anyway, my piece of advice for college kids. But Ankur, thank you so much. This was super, super, I mean, I learned a lot, and we're the same age even. So I want to thank you for coming on my podcast, putting time towards this, giving really well-rounded answers. And how can people follow you on your journey?
I can't really be followed like that, sorry, but I hope to be, I don't know, maybe we'll run into each other and you can tell me you saw this podcast.
Follow on LinkedIn.
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. If you can figure out where to find me, just send me a message and I'll connect with you.
Thank you guys so much. We love you. Bye.